Promoting Theosophical Community, the Henry S. Olcott Memorial Library presents How I Became a Theosophist. I'm Dan Smolla, and our guest today is the daring and debonair David Bruce. David, welcome.
You're welcome.
So let's start off with basic information. I know you have a rich background in Theosophy, so give us a little background about how you became a Theosophist, when you were first associated with the society.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thought you were going to ask me my name, and I did bring some prepared.
You're always very prepared. I see. That's a code name. I think I saw.
I'm just going to wing it, and yes, I've been a Theosophist for a while. 1985 was when I joined the society, so 27 years.
Wow, 27 years.
I come from a great city on a great lake, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Yeah, it is a great city.
A lot of people wish they lived there.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I'm driving around Chicago, I wish I was back in Milwaukee.
Yeah, yeah. So you started there. I
started there. I actually was exposed to Theosophy very early as a child because I was fortunate to have both my mother and father be members of the society, as well as my paternal grandmother.
Wow.
So I'm a third generation Theosophist.
So you grew up literally going to meetings maybe? And
not going to meetings, but I would say that particularly my mother exposed me to the ideas, even as a young child. You know how children ask a lot of real life questions, why this, why that? And I never knew it at the time, but when she answered those questions, she was giving me the theosophical view of these basic questions about life and death. I actually started reading the literature because my parents had a library, a nice library of theosophical books. I actually started reading some of the easier literature in about fourth or fifth grade.
Okay, so let's back up a second. Because I was still trying to master the shoe tie.
The shoe tie.
Third, fourth grade. So, first of all, the first thing you said, when your mom would give you these kind of existential or field your questions, do you remember how that sat with you as a 7 or 8 year old? Do you remember?
It seemed to make a lot of sense and explain some of the basic issues that I saw, the inequities in life, the unfairness, why some people were born rich, others were born poor, some people came into life with a lot of advantages and others did not have that. I know that's sort of weird for a little kid to be thinking about, but that's those are some of the thoughts that were going through my head. And I liked her answers.
You liked her. Do you remember if you ever tried to share these conversations with other kids your age?
No,
I'm serious. No, not really.
No,
you kind of had a sense that this was something you were into.
This was back in the 1950s.
Okay.
And you didn't talk about those things.
Okay. Okay, so you grew up, and you also began reading in, you said about fourth grade, some of the quote-unquote easier books. I don't. So
Leadbeater.
Okay, sure.
Some of the, whatever. I mean, I didn't tackle the secret doctrine. I can tell you that. That came much later.
Right, and so kind of right away, even at fourth grade, you started reading, and there was something that was being fulfilled, satisfied with these answers and this. There was two things that I can think of right now. There was explanations that made sense to a 9 or 10-year-old kid as to why the world is the way it is. And number two, I always had a sense, perhaps a mystical sense, but that there was something more to the existence beyond what your five senses could detect. And so I gravitated towards some of the literature written by clairvoyants who were able to see into these other realms and say that we live in a multiple dimension, a world of multiple dimensions. Leadbeater particularly, but others too. And then when you went to, let me back up. And then when did you, I guess you started around fourth grade and you became a member at about what age?
Well, it's a bit odd that, with my grandmother being a Theosophist and both parents, I never joined a society until I was, I think, 38 years old in 1985.
I guess I had a thing against joining organizations for a long time. It's something I picked up from reading too much Krishnamurti. But anyway, I have been a member for 27 years. I will remain a member for the rest of this incarnation, and I'm happy to be here.
And when you studied, I'm sorry for dwelling so much in the past, but it's just interesting. You have such a unique background. And so when you studied in college, did you study philosophy? Did you study mysticism?
No. I was very much involved in music. I went to a music conservatory at Berklee School of Music in Boston.
Right.
And later I went into the U.S. Army. This was during the Vietnam War. Got a job in the Army band, so I didn't have to tote a rifle in Vietnam. Right. And later, after I got out of the service, I went back to UW Milwaukee, and I got my teaching degree in music, teacher certification.
So always kind of on the side, you were reading Theosophy, and it was always part of your life. And then at around 38, you decided to join the society for
Yeah. And at that point, I got tired of reading books on my own, which I have been doing. I always was a voracious reader.
Yeah.
But I felt the need to mingle with people of life or like mind and share my ideas with them, talk to them. I got tired of just reading by myself in my study. I needed to interact at that point.
And now to jump way ahead, your present role with the Society, National Secretary.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, I'm very fortunate to have this job. I spent 25 years in the very tough, competitive, ruthless field of electronic distribution, 25 years.
Oh.
And after a while, it was really, the joy had gone out of it. But I thought I would do that for the rest of my life.
Okay.
And the company I was working for in 2003 got bought out by one of the larger competitors. And for the first time in my life, I was without a job. Okay. I had never been without a job. I had always gone from one to the next. And seemingly out of the blue, the president at that time, Betty Bland, called me and asked if I'd like to come down here and start the education department. So I was hired in 2003, June of 2003, to be the director of education here at Olcott, the National Center.
Okay, and now to jump away from Theosophical Resume to some Theosophical thoughts. Here's a general one for you. What does Theosophy mean to you?
All right. Let me just complete that other thought before I answer that. I'm currently the National Secretary, which 2 years ago I had done such a good job as Director of Education that no good deed goes unpunished, and they decided to promote me to this job and still keep part of the old job. So
as National Secretary, some of the things you do is to work closely with lodges, and you sort of coach them and encourage them. And
I do that. I still keep my fingers in the educational materials. I write materials for little courses that groups can use. I'm also the head of the prison program.
Oh, right.
But most importantly, and a lot of people don't know this, my most important job here is a stealth job. I'm the keeper of the clock. The huge grandfather clock in the lobby needs to be winded up every day, so I'm responsible for that. It's an awesome responsibility.
Always reminding people that in this incarnation there is linear progression.
Yes. But to get to your other question, after that little diversion, what does Theosophy mean to me? To keep it rather short, it's a philosophy that tells me that the universe, we live in an orderly universe. There is a greater plan to the way things are. We as human beings are conscious, responsible beings. We're responsible for our actions. And where we are today, each and every one of us, is a result of things that have come before. And of course, implicit in that is the idea that this is not our first incarnation, that we live again and again and again.
And what is your favorite theosophical book?
Oh, well, that is, I knew you were going to ask that, and that's a tough one to answer because at different stages of my growth, I've had different favorite books.
Right.
I I can give you a confession, can I not? This would help drive up your ratings.
Sure, sure.
I'm sort of a promiscuous reader.
Okay.
I haven't been faithful, so I'm very sorry about that. But I've been attracted by many different authors,
Okay.
and they're my mistresses. I'm happily married in real life, but
Right.
my mistresses are my books. So I would say early on it was Annie Besant, Bishop Leadbeater.
And so what did you like, if you can remember? What did you like, for example, about Annie Besant's writing?
Well, Annie Besant, I was in music, as you know. Annie Besant was sort of like listening to the music of J.S. Bach.
Okay.
Bach was a Baroque musician,
Yeah.
and the melodies were very ornate, with a lot of counterpoint. And the way Annie Besant wrote, with those long sentences, the Victorian language, it sort of reminded me of Bach. And in listening to Bach and in reading Annie Besant, you get a sense that there's a greater plan, there's a greater purpose, a dignity. Later on, I gravitated towards some of the classics, At the Feet of the Master, which was very helpful, and I still refer to that from time to time. It has very good advice for spiritual aspirants. Of course, The Voice of the Silence is one of our classics. I think Ed Abdel mentioned that.
He did.
That is a beautiful piece of literature. The language is just elegant and uplifting. I spent several years later tackling some of the more difficult works, The Science of Yoga by I.K. Taimni,
Sure.
which The Science of Yoga, if our listeners don't know, that is the title of his book, which is a commentary on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. I think I first started reading that in 89 or 90, and most of it just went right over my head.
Yeah.
I continued to read other things, and I came back to that in about 10 years, and at that point I could tell that I was able to grasp a little more, because then I was able to get much more out of that book.
So,
And then after that, the Mahatma Letters, spent several years, and also The Secret Doctrine, delving into those books, exploring them.
also Ashish a little bit.
Yeah, lately I would say Sri Madhava Ashish has been one of my favorite. Man, Son of Man.
And what do you like about his writing?
Oh, he's just in depth. He's very, his mind is just, has such depth to it.
Yeah.
And also originality of thought. Of course, Man, Son of Man is commentary on volume 2 of the Sacred Doctrine, Anthropogenesis. But just his whole take, it strikes me as very original, very insightful.
Let's say there's a new person who comes into the society and they say, sir, you've been around for a long time. I'm new to Theosophy. What 2 or 3 books should I read if I'm brand new?
That should be a simple question. It depends on the person's age. It depends on my sense of that person. Depending who I'm talking to, I may answer that question differently at different times. But if they're looking for something on moral or ethical guidelines, I might recommend At the Feet of the Master. If they're well-read, if I sense that a more difficult book wouldn't be too daunting, I might recommend The Key to Theosophy or even The Secret Doctrine.
To start with.
Perhaps to start with.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it depends on the audience.
It depends on the person or the audience.
Okay. And now a very general question about the future of our society. What would you wish for the future of the Theosophical Society?
Well, the Theosophical Society has been around for well over 100 years, and I hope it does continue. My hope is that future generations of Theosophists will remain true to the basic vision of the society that the founders had. And by the founders, I mean not only people such as H.P. Blavatsky or Colonel Olcott, but the masters who inspired that. So I hope we remain true to that original vision which has brotherhood at its core. I hope that we do not ever devolve into an organization which concerns itself with just social issues or politics. That would be the death of us, politics. And we've successfully avoided getting involved in politics. I love politics personally, but not this
Not
organization.
for the society.
No. And social issues are fine. You should. People are encouraged to get involved in
But
social
as a,
issues.
as
But
a
those
society,
can be.
you think it's very important that we
Yeah,
stick to.
we have a higher purpose than
Okay,
that. And social issues can be very divisive.
Yeah.
They can.
Yeah.
And what we're all about unity, brotherhood.
Yeah.
So what we have is much more important than those issues. And I hope we never lose our original focus.
Sure. Great answer. Great interview. I can say for sure somebody who embodies service, work ethic, and dignity on a daily basis. It's a pleasure to have you here and to work with you.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed the interview, and now I think I have to go wind the clock in the lobby.
Thank you, David.